Bueno, buenas tardes. ¿Cómo le va todo? Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en otro Conversando Concisos, acá desde Estados Unidos. Dándole la bienvenida a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos. Mi nombre es Edgar Rojas. Hoy nuestro colega Andrés se encuentra en un trancón en Bogotá, así que creo que no nos va a acompañar y estamos esperando que se conecte nuestro amigo de hoy, Alex Pinto. Creo que está un poquito... ahí está Alex. Antes de comenzar entonces con Alex, la invitación es a que nos acompañen el 7 de octubre en Santa Marta. Estamos en el CISO LATAM Summit y espero que nos acompañen. Va a estar muy, muy bueno. Con el Hotel Marriott de Santa Marta estamos tomando todas las medidas por el tema del COVID. Así que vamos a estar bien protegidos, bien cuidaditos y vamos a tener un buen tiempo allá. Si no nos pueden acompañar en persona, nos pueden acompañar de manera virtual. Vamos a conversar con Alex en un ratito acerca de VERIS y del el documento que Alex y su equipo crean anualmente, el Data Breach Investigations Report. Y entonces, vámonos aquí a inglés. Alex, you can go ahead and unmute. There you go.
All right, here we
All
are.
right. How are you, man? How's everything?
Oh, good. Everything's good.
Excellent, excellent. Let me just switch back to Spanish really quick. Para todos, entonces, nos acompañan aquí. Gracias por acompañarnos. Por chat nos pueden enviar sus preguntas o por el Q&A y yo los mantengo aquí listo para que nos responda cualquier pregunta. All right, Alex, so thank you so much. I mean, the last time that you and I saw each other in person was during one of the first B-sides Nashville's. That was a long, long, long time ago, but I appreciate you being here. So tell us about Verizon. Tell us about the group that you lead and the data breach investigation report that you guys produce on a yearly basis.
Yes, of course. So, I mean, first of all, I want to thank you for having me here. And I'm really sorry that even though I can understand maybe 95 to 99% of the Spanish that you speak, I cannot speak it. I'm just going to make a fool of myself, right? And we're trained by a very early age in Brazil that we just look like fools when we try to speak Spanish if we don't know the language. So I still internalize a lot of that.
That's cool.
So I work for Verizon, like you said, and Verizon is a pretty darn big company, right? And the folks in the US are aware of it as one of the mobile telco companies, right? But I work on the product team for enterprise products, right? So there is an enterprise focused organization, and there is a security focused product focused organization inside the enterprise, right? So I work for those folks, right? And one of the things that they put together is the data breach investigation report. They have been doing it for, again, almost 15 years, right?
Yes.
So technically my role is, I don't know what you want to call it, head or person. I'm definitely not a director because directors are very big folks there. But I handle security research and security content for the SIN, for the security services products they have there, right? So a lot to do with threat intelligence in a very broad sense of the word, right? If you squint, like the DBIR is threat intelligence, right? We're telling you about the threats, right? So that's kind of where, you can, if you wanted to sum it up, that's probably where it's going to fit, right? So been in this group for almost 4 years now. I have helped with 3 of the reports ever since 2019. Even though 2019, I didn't write anything. I joined the team after the kind of the draft was already done. I just helped it get to publication, right? But yeah, any complaints you have about the layer two, I'm the person you need
All
to
right.
hit, you know.
No, that's great. That's great. So yeah, so now you lead the team that creates that, and it's known. It's known as the infosec Bible, right? Everyone waits for that report, and a lot of organizations are now copying and trying to do the same things. So last week we had our program focused on VERIS, right? And I hadn't heard of VERIS before then. Basically, there was a message on LinkedIn from the MITRE intelligence group, I think it's called, something like that. Or anyway,
Ingenuity. It's
Ingenuity,
the name of
yes.
the, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
MITRE
I'll explain
Ingenuity.
all of that. Yeah.
Right. And I was very interested. I'm like, whoa. Okay, so VERIS with mapping to MITRE ATT&CK. And I was like, well, let's do some more research. I started doing the research, and then I realized, I'm like, wow, this VERIS thing, it's pretty amazing. And the funny thing, Alex, is that VERIS has been around for a long time. It's not something that it's new. And a lot of the professionals that are joining us, and they joined us last week and are joining us right now, the majority also had not heard of VERIS. And so when we started looking and going through it, we went to the GitHub and we went through, through the documentation and the examples, and we're like, wow, this is great. I'm not into incident response. I'm not a threat intelligence. So I can, but we can see, a lot of us had like all this
I know what
these
you mean.
light bulbs coming on. We're like, oh my God, what a great tool. And it's free. And then there's the, what's it called? The VERIS app. Is that the one that Gabriel Bassett wrote, or?
Yeah, the web application, which,
Yeah.
I mean, which is not great, right? We're gonna get to that as well. I'm happy to talk through
Okay.
all of this. So the fact is that VERIS is like the worst unintentionally guarded secret from the DBIR team, right? The truth is that absolutely everything we do in DBIR is actually organized in VERIS language, right? So after you see VERIS and you read the DBIR again, oh, this is what they're talking about.
Yes.
So when they say malware, this is what they mean. When they say hacking, which we often get a beating for, oh, you shouldn't say hacking because hackers are not. No. That's a proper now, a term in VERIS for specific attacks with hands behind keyboard, right? We didn't have a better name at the time, right? And now it's kind of too late to change it because of compatibility. It's a completely different can of worms, but it's still there. Everything we do on the DBIR is organized in the way VERIS is put together, right? So in VERIS it was really an answer, again, way back when, to, oh, how the hell can we write about breaches, right? How can we organize our thoughts? How can we classify them, right? And it has really stood the test of time over this, I mean, more than a decade, right? Around being relevant and being able to talk about in a high level, right, what the breaches are what are the components, right? What are the things, how you should interpret and how you should organize them, right? So we've always known, right? But we've done terrible. If you open the DBIR, like the first page where we talk about, okay, this is like the kind of the introduction of how you use the report. We talk about VERIS there, right?
Yes.
But it's all implied throughout the rest of the thing.
Yes.
So the thing with MITRE really was, so MITRE has put together this, it's a different organization, but of course they're closely related, which is MITRE Ingenuity. And the idea is that MITRE does work for the government, right? MITRE Ingenuity is a nonprofit that does work with private organizations, right? So the idea is that they have several different programs. One of them is the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, which is a fancy way for we need data in order to figure out what we're going to do, right? And a bunch of organizations join, right? You have to put in you have a research budget, you provide them, and then throughout the year you go bidding on projects, right? And a bunch of organizations come together and like, oh, we really want to do this. So example is they did a while ago a project about mapping the attack framework to the controls that are available on Azure, right?
Yeah.
Very down to earth, very immediately useful for anyone who's using Azure, right? And they're
Yeah.
now going down the line of all the other cloud providers.
Oh,
Like,
great.
why did we start with Azure, you ask? Well, Microsoft was a big sponsor of that project, so there you go. But anyway, one of the projects with this, right, was the VERIS to attack mapping, right? And because it's clear to us that, again, attack has captured a lot of the mind share, right? Especially because it's so practical, right? It's so down to the technology level, right? So much so that it's fairly easy, right? And it's now fairly common and expected for a vendor to be able to map their detections to the specific techniques. So you know you have coverage if, you know, the specific vendor says that, I mean, if they're telling the truth or not, it's a completely different conversation, but they're trying to at least have the mapping and give you guidance on what you're doing or not doing. So if you imagine your average Fortune 500 or 1,000 company, the CISO will sit there and they will read the DBIR and say, oh, look at this. Phishing is super bad, right? Phishing is more than a third. Okay, whatever the direct is. Okay, you go fix phishing for us. Here you go. Here's the DBIR.
Go fix it, yeah.
Yeah, and like, so how do you even start, right? Because it provides you the direction, it provides you the strategic vision, but it doesn't necessarily map to what you should be doing on the ground level, right? So when you link those two things together, suddenly you know, okay, phishing, the most likely techniques that would be associated with this are those. So now your next step is, do I have coverage on those? So it became so much more easier for you to have like a standard way of translating let's say the high level anxieties, right, of what you should be defending against to something more tangible and more automatic.
But you just said a very important statement there, Alex. You said, you know, how does this affect me, right? My company, right? Because that report is based on global information that you guys have Verizon get through the VERIS and everything. So in you just say, hey, we've seen most of these attacks, right? But again, how does that apply to me, right? And that's where I liked about that VERIS tool, because it allows you to collect information that is specific to your organization.
Exactly.
And it's information that you can collect all the time because you're already collecting all this information. In our industry, personally, what is the thing that I have the biggest peep with? Everyone says, oh yeah, we have SIEM and we have this and we have this, XDR, blah, blah, blah. And we collect all that information, right? And I always ask, what do you do with that information? A lot of people just collect it. Oh, because we have to have, you know, something for an investigation in the future. And I'm like, well, no, there's got to be a better way of using that information than just leaving it there in case something happens. So I think that's a great, that's a fantastic. And when we saw VERIS last week, that's one thing that jumped out at me. I'm like, oh, we can use this to find out exactly what is going on with my organization. Then use the DBIR report, as you say, right? And say, are we susceptible? How are we doing with that? So I think that's a great point.
But here's the thing, right? We have been trying to focus for the past year or so, making VERIS more accessible. There's so much work we have to do, and one of the things that I have as my objective for until before we release the next report, which I mean should be the normal time we release the reports, is to try to create a better web application that's more, not only more pleasant to the eye, so to speak. That UI is from last century, but but also it is. It's like 2000s now. nobody cares. The fact is that it's not easy to use. It doesn't teach you how to do VERIS, right? You have to come from a place where you understand a lot to be able to use it properly. So that's definitely one of the things that we want to do. If you are in the business of, I'm going to manually input my incidents and things like that to try to do that comparison. However, what this mapping now allows us to do as well is, if you have currently a heat map of these are the attack techniques that I'm seeing inside my organization, right? And again, you know this because your security tools, they have the mapping, and like you said, you're storing this data, it's all in your SIM, you know which alerts triggered, right? You do this mapping, suddenly now you can translate it to VERIS as well. So you already got a great starting point from data collection, from a data collection standpoint for VERIS. For again, you're trying to compare how you're doing against DBIR, right? Or how does DBIR translate to you? We just, I mean, we don't, there is no, something that is being worked on is some other tooling that will help use specifically the mappings that we have, right? The mappings are public, the mappings are going to be free, they're going to be maintained by us and MITRE, right? And we're working on making it easier to use as well. But again, anyone now has the potential to do it. Right. There's still some elbow grease is necessary. You do have to do some work. You do have to do some coding, but we just created the path, right? We just created how.
It's the industry. You mentioned tools, right? So there's a lot of tools out there that companies use to keep track of open tickets for incident response and all that stuff, right? Is there any type of acceptance from the industry that will align with the VERIS language? Because it seemed to me that is one of the major obstacles, right? It's come up with the same, as you said at the beginning, the same language. What's malware and what's hacking, all right? It at the beginning, you look at it, you're like, well, you cannot explain it, right? You cannot explain the difference between the two of them. And then the more you think about it, it gets very complicated really quick. And the reason is because there's no single source that says, we all agree that hacking is this, malware is this, and everything. Is that one of the things that you guys are planning on doing, by using VERIS? Are you trying to go with the industry to establish that common language?
Yeah, we definitely want to offer it as an option, right? We do believe, of course, we're biased, right? We use it every year to put the DBIR together, but we do believe it's a great starting point, even if people want to take it wholesale, right? And the fact is that there are a lot of companies that have historically, over the years, adopted VERIS internally to be able to talk about it. This is something that happens, right? This is something that there's several very big companies that either have a program today or they had in the past, right? And but it's something that we struggle to connect with them, right? We don't have a very good, the DBIR team doesn't have a very good front-facing way to connect with them, which is also something we're working with. And also, it doesn't help that VERIS originally came from Verizon, right? So folks are, I don't want to talk to Verizon that I'm using this because they're going to try to tell me something. They're going to
exactly.
Guys, I sell nothing. I don't sell. I do buy stuff from Verizon, please, because otherwise I don't get paid my salary. But I don't care. I just want you folks to use it. I want it to. It has to be useful. It has to be good, right? Yeah. That's kind of where.
But the funny thing, Alex, is that you have a repeatable yearly, let's say proven result, right? The DBIR is a proven result that VERIS works and works fantastic. So
excellent point, actually. I didn't think of it like that, but yeah.
Right, exactly.
Bigger proof there.
There's your proof, right? And it's worldwide and everyone is using it. So imagine if everyone starts to use at least part of it. Just begin the baby steps of establishing that as part of your first steps incident response program. Just you do the cataloging. using the VERIS language and start small, I think it will be extremely beneficial to the entire industry.
Yeah, well, you don't have to sell it to me, my friend.
So
yeah, I obviously agree, right?
yeah,
And again, it's baby steps, right? And we believe that it begins with awareness. And like you and your audience is demonstrating, like just by the fact that we managed to do this work with MITRE, right? And we got there because they have way more money to publicize their standards than I have, right? Even though, again, Verizon's a big company, but I'm a teeny tiny thing on it. You can already see the benefits, right? You folks, this is intriguing.
Yes.
What is this, right? And really, my in a way, my call to action, if you may, if you're interested, just come talk to us, right? We're more than happy to help. We won't sell you any Verizon stuff. We don't sell anything in the DBIR team, right? We can help talk you through it. We can share some of the resources we use for internal training on how to use VERIS, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we're doing today to, and like I told you, make it more accessible, right? But it is a long journey. It's something that's going to take us at least 6 more months to be in a good position.
So going back to the using VERIS with MITRE attack, right? Again, we went through the examples there. And one of the examples was the CISO says, hey, the competition just got, ransomware with this ransomware X. Are we susceptible? So then the example was that they went and they did a quick search on VERIS database that they collected internal, and they found that they have these 3 types of phishing attacks that were, identified that we were attacked 3 times around the year. And then they went ahead and based on that, they go to the VERIS to MITRE database and they're like, oh, the attack, it applies to T1056. Go to 1056 and they say, well, I'm just making that number up. And it goes there and it says, hey, yeah, this is the attack. And this is the mitigating controls, right? So immediately you can see if you're protected. Now, the funny thing, Alex, is that I was expecting to see something about MITRE defend, because MITRE already has the attack to the defend, right? And we did a couple of episodes on the MITRE defend stuff. And in fact, the guy who wrote the MITRE defend, he actually listened to our show and he goes, based on, my small understanding in Spanish and what you guys were talking about, yeah, you were right on the dot on the MITRE defend. So it's like, I can see everything going end to end, right? With the VERIS information, mapping to attack, and now definitely mapping to defend, which is it's fantastic. I think. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, part of the unspoken mission, really, of the center, the work that we're doing with MITRE is really like, they want to try to create building blocks for solving the problem, right? They're never going to build a product. It's not their place, right? But maybe we can create, like, let's talk about infrastructure. Like, maybe we can create the highways, right? Maybe we can create the train tracks, right? That people will be driving through, right? So if you if you want a relatively unbiased view from someone who's not trying to sell you anything, right? I'm speaking specifically of the standards, right? Not necessarily myself. I'm speaking of the standards. Standards are built and they're put together on under everybody's eyes, right? And they are built to be unbiased. They're built to be clear, right? And suddenly you can very easily, right? Because someone went through the trouble and the thought process of mapping those things together, you can very easily navigate all this maze and like, oh, if I'm concerned about phishing, these are the techniques, these are the defend specific actions, I don't know what they call them, right? And so here's a blueprint of where I should get started, right?
Yes.
If you're using something like so we on the DBIR with VERIS, we do a VERIS mapping with the TIS controls, right? The the old Sense Top 10, they became the critical security controls from CIS,
Right.
right? And they have a maturity model there, which is fantastic, right? You have like the implementation group 1, 2, and 3. So start here, right? So you can assess where you are in the journey, and you can try. Okay, these are the like priority 0 stuff I have to do right now,
Yeah.
right? If I want to address those specific things, right? It becomes it takes the guesswork away a little bit, right? Because
Yes.
we work on an area that's so overwhelming. You have to be 100% aware and try to defend against absolutely everything.
Everything. Yep.
Where do we start is
Ex-
a super important question, right?
Exactly. And again, it goes with the example that you gave at the beginning, right? The CISO of the Fortune 1000 company reads the report and says, hey, phishing is number 1, go ahead and fix it. In our company, maybe
absolutely made up example.
No, I know.
Never happens in real life.
Exactly, never happens in real life, right? And
No,
and then as you said, right, they go and the company starts investing. And I'm part of the big 4 big consulting company, right? And supposedly we're the biggest cyber consulting company in the world. And but they come up with all these projects, right? The clients do all these Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and then you see everyone bidding for those and getting. And again, reading through this VERIS thing and going through all the research that I did about this thing, as you said, the heat map, the roadmap, this tool allows me to create a specific roadmap specific to me without the guesswork, right? Because if I have the information, right, I've been attacked 3 times during the year for phishing, and I've been attacked once with hacking with a 0 day, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I have that information as a CISO, I know where I'm going to be putting in my investment. And when I go to the board of directors, I want to say, hey, we need X amount of money for this, and that, because look what's happened, right? And you go to the board of directors with facts. You don't say, well, because Alex Pinto and his team in the DBIR said, this is what we're all seeing, so we need to spend money.
You're seeing it in your environment, your very own DBIR.
Yes, exactly. So that's the conversation. So now let's move the next half hour on that. How do we do it, right? What are your recommendations for all the CISOs that are connected here right now? Where should they start?
So I think that so all that we are doing is, in a way, trying to create the language, right? We're trying to create a way that we can all talk to each other and have a common vocabulary. So if I tell you, if I say hacking to you, you know what I mean, right? And so you have to start from a place where you are able, you have to build your own ramp, still using the highway metaphor, right? So that either your strategy, right? I mean, the kind of the top-down things that you want to do, right, is mapping to one of those standards in some way, or the bottom-up approach we were just discussing, as in you have one of those tools that's able to generate a mapping or relates to a mapping on attack or something like that. So then you can start creating your view of, okay, this is what's happening to me. This is what's happening to my company, right? Because you need one of those starting points in order to connect, right? And then if you connect, right, then you can start again pivoting around with those specific tools, right, to try to create a larger strategy, right? I think the example you did was perfect, right? So let's look at the data we have on the SIM. Is it mapped to attack? It is. Okay, here's the heat map of all the things we are blocking correctly. These are the things that went through, right? And honestly, you don't even need to flip it to VERIS necessarily. just that, it's already, if you're starting there, it's already very, very rich, right?
Yes.
One of the things we're excited about on the DBIR, and think again at a larger thing, but I'm going to give the larger example so people can understand. They can also do this is, and we did this like a very small piece of this on the 2020 edition, right? This is something we want to double down in, is if we can read attack now the same way we read VERIS, right? Now we're able to look at two different sides of the quote-unquote kill chain in a way and make decisions about, are we doing a good job or not? Because the work we do on the DBIR with VERIS, it's all about, okay, this was bad stuff that happened, right? For something to qualify to be on the database we use for the DBIR, has to have been successful, right? Okay, the breach occurred, right? And
yes.
then phishing is this percent, and vulnerabilities is this percent, right? But if you look at your defense tooling and you say, oh, there's like a huge number of malware that's blocked that is Trojan-like, that is a banking, your traditional run-of-the-mill banking Trojan, right? So when you see that, oh, a lot of banking Trojans being caught, and you look at DBIR, banking Trojans have been on a decline percentage-wise as the things that cause breaches. Looks like we're doing a good job here,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
No, this is like the holy grail. We never know if we're doing a good job. You know what I mean? We can never. We just like throwing stuff at the wall.
So that's
right?
that's the famous ROI. That's how you.
That's the famous ROI, right? If you see, oh, we're doing a lot of good work blocking here, and there are no incidents related to this, we're doing a good job, right? On the other hand, if you have a lot of ransomware being caught, but you're still being affected by a lot of ransomware, well, just clearly hot, which again, nobody will argue that ransomware is not hot. We need more work. We need to do more stuff here, right? So, and even worse is it's happening a lot and you're not catching it. Now you're in trouble. So, really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it allows you to kind of understand where you are against all those differences, because we know those things are very prevalent, right? I usually give people this example, right? I tell them, and people will come from the DBIR to us, oh, you're seeing here that only 2.5% of breaches were by vulnerabilities being exploited. I go to my work, I go to the my practice, vulnerabilities are being exploited everywhere. It's such a nightmare. Well, if that's 2.5% and phishing is 33%, how bad do you think phishing could be? And you're not paying attention to it as well, right?
Yes.
So anyway, there's a lot you could potentially do, right? But it becomes we did not have before this way to compare like for like, right? And because now there is, again, we are tapping onto this huge support that attack has, right? We're now able to do this work. And honestly, we don't do anything fancy with the instant work, right? It's really tallying it up and comparing. That's all. Statistics is counting, fancy counting, right?
Yeah.
And we also, like you saw on that, on the GitHub, right? We also make the vast majority of our tools public, right? So we usually have, so when we're writing a DBIR, we usually create new functions, new visualizations that become, they are kept private until the DBIR is released. But when it's released, we add those tools to the open source version.
So is the DBIR is the database that the DBIR based on, is that public?
So no, but that's a good question. That's a good question. So the data from the DBIR, even though it comes to us anonymized, it's given 100% in confidence, right?
Okay.
A lot of stuff is signed, right? And we have we actually have a mandate we don't share the data even with Verizon proper.
Okay.
Right? Verizon can only see really the aggregated statistics, which is what everybody else sees. Right?
Okay.
It's because of this care that we have of the data that we're able to have competitors even providing us with data. So this is very strict. Nobody can really see the data or manage it, right?
Okay.
But we create a lot of tooling in order for folks to be able to see the aggregate, right? So we have, for instance, so there's two things that I believe could be helpful for people if they're interested in going beyond the DBIR, beyond the published report, right? Because honestly, it's 100 pages, but there's so much stuff we don't write about because it doesn't fit, right? Okay. So we have an interactive website, right, where you can look at all the aggregated analysis data that we have published over the years. So you can make your own conclusions about, how has this specific thing been evolving over the years? Right? Right. All the charts are there, right? And you can pretty much glimpse at all the data that we are allowed to show from that website, right? Okay. A lot of good, interesting navigation, right? And a lot of different things like that. So that's one aspect of the data that we're able to make public. There is another aspect where there is another open source project that we sponsor on the DBIR, which is the VERIS community database, VCDB. Right. Okay. The idea is we have someone in our team who is literally has 1,000 Google alerts, and every time something hits the media about a specific breach, doesn't matter how big it is, how small it is. Of course, we always get to look at the big ones as well. It goes into a GitHub repository for mainly our team, but we also have some volunteers that help code it into VERIS using the web app you're talking about, okay, right? And it adds to the database. So that database, it's all public data. Okay. So it is exactly in the format that we manage it in the DBIR. Wow. Right? But it's all public. So a couple of things there. First of all, if someone is interested in learning more about VERIS, how VERIS is put together, right? Want to kind of like exercise those muscles that they just found out they had, right? We have content that can help people get up to speed and understand, this is how you do one of those. And then you pick one of the ones we selected for volunteers, which are the simpler ones. You start to get into the hang of it, right? Yeah. So if you're interested in how can I make VERIS my own, how can I use VERIS inside an organization, that's a great, and at least we try to make it as low friction as possible for you to get some exercises. And of course, you send it over to us, we'll review it, we'll tell you, yeah, got it right, this is good. Don't forget to add this, because there's a lot of nuance, right? We're happy to help, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is it allows researchers and that are into the data analysis part, they can grab something that looks a substantial sample of what the DBIR database looks like. They can run all sorts of different transforms. They can create their own visualizations. They can do all sorts of different things using the same tooling that we use. Then they can call us and say, look, this is the stuff I ran on the public database. Can you run this on the secret database, the private database, right? And we do, right? Okay. And of course we do. We can have a specific custom analytics, right? Okay. We cannot share the database, but we're more than happy to run. And this community database becomes a great, I can send you the links of those things, and then you probably can add it to.
I can share
something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so question that I had, since we're in Latin America and we're focused on Latin America, a lot of this information, I'm assuming you guys get everything. A lot of majority of the information is from the US and Europe. How much information are you getting from Latin America? Do you wish you were more, or it's perfect?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Not enough. Yeah. So we we're really looking for specifically incident response companies that are would be willing to talk to us, understand if this is how they can help, and again there are specific perks we provide. Like you get to see the DBIR a week early, right? You get to have your data analyzed just for you, right?
Wow.
And we try to make it interesting, right? But it's tough. We don't really have. I mean, I'm in the U.S. as well, right? And I mean, all the people that I used to work with in Brazil, they're all like, I don't know, rich and retired or something. They don't run the consultancies anymore. Somehow I ended up still working, but they're fine. So even though, I mean, there are some folks in Brazil I work with, there are some folks in, there are at least a few companies. I think there's Guatemala. I'm gonna say something wrong here.
No, that's
I don't
fine.
quite remember, but the number is way lower than we would like to.
Okay.
The thing is that we're very overrepresented in the US not because of the consulting companies there, but because of the government. So everything that we can get, like Secret Service, FBI, right? All those guys, right? They contribute data. So we become overrepresented because honestly, we talk to everyone there, right? We saturated kind of the market, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for us to grow and also do coverage, right? So funnily enough, the US is number one, but actually the number two is Australia.
Australia.
Not even Europe, right? Australia has a very vibrant
information
security community there, and we get a lot of stuff from them.
Interesting. So one of the in one of the tweets that you had, you were talking about the colonial pipeline, and it was an example of how VERIS was used or could have been used in the explain that process.
So we are
and one second,
things we're trying to,
and 1 second, just to get everyone to understand, the colonial pipeline was the big critical infrastructure company in the States that got ransomware. When was it? Early this year. And it was
May.
It was May, and it caused a whole bunch of issues in the States with gas prices going up and everything, and it basically was down for the count. So that was a huge deal. So Colonial Pipeline was big, one of the big ransomware victims. Go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, what we are doing, right? And there's a whole series of blog posts on the same kind of like idea, is that look, we code those incidents, no matter how big or how small, we code those incidents for the DBIR, right? So we decided why don't we show people how we code, how we classify those ones that are very famous, right? And so the idea here was, look, and at the time we wrote this, I think they hadn't had all the details. So they didn't really know how they got in or stuff like that. And so I think we put together two different versions. Oh, if they did like this is what the coding would look like. If they did like that, this is what the coding would look like.
Okay.
Right? But it's really to, again, open folks' minds to the possibility of you can memorialize, you can categorize, you can. This is a viable way for you to describe those things, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the kind of the gist, right? We want to get people's minds into the idea of standardizing what they're seeing, right?
Yeah.
They have it all standardized, right? Then we can start talking about sharing.
Yes.
Right? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, right?
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
And that was great. I mean, as you said, during the conversation, you mentioned it's like after seeing this, then we understand where the DBIR, how you guys are creating all this stuff on the DBIR. And in fact, that's one of the things that my co-host Andres mentioned to me last week after our conversation. He's like, now I understand what they mean by malicious internal actors, right? Because there is a common, what do you call it? A common wording or a common significance, or what? Yeah. That then it tells you exactly what it is that we're talking about. It just makes so much sense at that point.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear. Exactly why we tried to put it together.
So let me ask you a question again. Latin America, everything is in English. Are you guys have any plans on maybe doing a Spanish version in order to drive up participation from Latin America?
That's a good question. So the way the DBIR is structured today is that we actually do translate the executive summary for Spanish. Right?
Oh, okay.
So you can go to the website.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
We do actually. We do.
Wow.
There's a bunch of I don't know what the languages are.
Yeah.
It's German maybe. There's only one country that gets a full DBIR translation, which is Japan, right? And it's a very strict cultural thing there.
Yeah.
And I personally am very sad that I cannot read it. I don't know the first thing about Japanese because I'm really curious to see how they translated the jokes.
Yeah.
I'll never know. I'll never know if they did a good job, a bad job, you know. But
yeah, that's funny. It's very difficult. So, Alex, how many people in your team?
It is so it's 5 people total counting with me, right? So it's four people, right?
That's too few to create this big, such an important thing.
We do some magic, right? The truth is that over the years we have created a lot of automation, a lot of like pre-processing work, right? We actually been doubling down on this in the past couple of years, right? So we're ready to, if the amount of data we receive today would double, right? We probably wouldn't be ready for it still with the team that we have, right? And this is really an important goal for us, right? To be able to respond to what's over there. But it takes 6 months to put the report together.
Okay.
Like, through and through, right? We start collecting data like November, so it's almost time again.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Exactly, it's around the corner.
Start doing it, right? And the biggest time sink for us is not writing the report, right? Writing the report is easy. It takes us like a couple of weeks. Okay. We spend all this time analyzing the data, parsing the data, making sure it makes sense, making sure herding all the contributors, right, to make sure that they send the data in. Yeah. Writing the report is easy. Making all this data make sense, my friend. Yeah. It is a full-time job for people, right? Okay. If I had more people, we would be doing more for sure.
You'll find how everyone will stay busy. That's unreal.
That's true.
So Alex, the invitation is whenever the next version of the DBIR comes available, please come back and
it would be
talk to us
pleasure.
about it. Yeah, that'll be fantastic. And then the last one thing before we cut. So again, just to make sure, how difficult will it be for CISOs in Latin America to start implementing DBIR as part of their incident response process?
Honestly, if anybody's interested and intrigued by this, right? Either if you are, I am let's say an end user of security. I'm not a company that sells security, right? And I would like to take the first steps. We can talk to you. I mean, we're more than happy to talk to you, right? And see if there's any way we can help, right? Help you make sense, help you get started, right? Like I said, we have materials, we have stuff we can share that helps people get started with it, right? And if you are in a consultancy that does incident response, right? And oh yeah, maybe there could be some benefit maybe for working with the DBIR team, right? Again, please do talk to us, right?
Okay.
And I don't think it's really about a mindset, right? Once you get started on using it, then you're able to, okay, all right, this is how I can do this, and this is how I can make this mine. I can make this a part of the stuff I normally do.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's easy like any company-wide transformation,
Right.
right? Depending how big you are, of course, it's even more
Yeah.
daunting. But we're here to help. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Alex, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Fantastic information. Wow, only 5 people to create the Bible. That's on a yearly basis. That's
every year.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Amazing. Appreciate your time here. Todos, muchas
Thank you
gracias por
so much.
acompañarnos y nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Que tengan un feliz fin de semana. See you later, Alex.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye.